when there's a conflictual situation with somebody and I'm in it, if I can train myself to first listen to the other person, say, okay, let me understand where I am in this, where I am, not the other person, where am I in this? And the way that I know where I am is if I understand landscape. And this other person and their perspective of the issue is the landscape. When I can be clear on the landscape of my part and their part, then I can actually take steps to ask questions, to use the 4 steps of impactful communication. But if I don't know where they are, I'm almost always shooting in the dark. So when we give ourselves that opportunity to understand and connect, and the time to clarify what's present for the other person, often a solution presents itself, which is why I say that conflict is an illusion. Because when we understand one another and we're in a space of seeking together a solution, then there's really not conflict. There's just different viewpoints and perhaps different desires. But when we understand one another, we can then actually work together to find that solution. It's when we insist our viewpoint is right and the other person's viewpoint is wrong. When they're both valid, like we had in the genius of non-judgment, when they're both valid, then they can be opposing, but we can still come together and find a solution, even though they're opposing viewpoints. Here, and this is, I'm talking out of experience now. Without an additional step in between, how do you feel? Without that information, I'm basically asking somebody to change behavior that is overriding something. So if they're feeling annoyed in situations like this, you need to keep your eye on the ball. You need to keep your focus on the theme of the conversation. If something is said in that conversation that you have a strong reaction to, then it really derails the conversation, because then you're occupied with that and then you have a more conflictual relationship with the actual conflict because of that comment. One tool that I use consistently is that it didn't annoy me, I annoy myself. It didn't frustrate me, I frustrate myself. And the reason that I have trained myself to speak that way to myself is then I'm clear that the thing out there is neutral, just like the facts. If we come back to the genius of non-judgment, they're neutral. The woman said, girls are out there sleeping around trying to get pregnant. That's neutral. That came out of her mouth. There's no right or wrong about that. There's no charge to it. It's a fact that that came out of her mouth, which is neutral. Everything after that, I'm putting into it. How could she say that? That's ridiculous. Doesn't she read the papers? What news journalists would write that? There's only fake news in the world. Like, I can go all the way down that road. But if I start with, this is something she said, and it's her belief, then I'm already at a place where I don't need to engage in that. I can, if I want to, but I don't have to. I can keep focused on what the theme of the conversation is. I've worked with people who have committed murder, who have raped people, who have beaten their children. I've worked with, there's not a lot that I haven't heard in my career in working with people. And when I stay in the place, as I've chosen to do, of non-judgment and really listening as to why, like curiosity, why would you want to do that? Like, why did that make sense to you? And when they start talking, I can see why it made sense to them, given their current understanding, given their abilities, given their cultural background, given what information they have. It's like, wow, that's how they put that together. They constructed it that way, that made sense to them. The reason that that is useful is because if I can help them understand what their construct is, what they put together, then we can start looking at, do you believe that? Is that a useful belief for you? If you're working in a place where a lot of teens are coming in who are pregnant, how useful is it to believe that they're all doing it on purpose? Have you talked to anybody? Should we have a conversation about how they got there? I would want to have that conversation. And the way to have that conversation is to first understand that their belief is valid. A fact can be right or wrong, but their belief is not wrong just because it doesn't agree with my value system. I can understand somebody without believing what they believe. As a matter of fact, it's very helpful. I'll give you all a concrete example. I worked with a gentleman once, a father, and he had two children. He had an 18-year-old autistic, a son who was on the autistic spectrum and was incredibly violent. And he had a 15-year-old daughter. And they all lived in one home. And the son was often violent, physically violent with his sister, with his 15-year-old sister. And he was big. He was a big guy, the 18-year-old. So the father used to beat the son to stop him from hurting his sister. If I'd have come into this conversation with, oh my God, how can you beat an autistic boy? He's your son? He's autistic. Like, how could you do that? If I came into the conversation that way, with those judgments, with my belief system of one shouldn't beat anybody, one shouldn't beat autistic people, one should XYZ, right? If I came in with all my shoulds and woulds in my belief system, I could never have helped this man. So what I did was I listened and I started asking questions. So got a specific scenario. So why, when your son hit your daughter, did you hit him? Because I don't want him to hit my daughter. Okay. So understanding you don't want him to hit your daughter, why did you hit your son? I'm trying to protect him. I said, well, first of all, what are you trying to protect him from? Well, from the world, from him getting in trouble out in the world when he leaves the home. Okay. So how does hitting him help protect him? Well, because if he learns not to be violent, then he can't get in trouble out in the world. See, so this is how he's putting it together. I said, okay. I said, so if you don't want him to be violent out in the world or with your daughter, why are you hitting him to accomplish that? And he looked at me like I just dropped out of the sky. He said, you mean there's another way? I said, well, I don't know. You've chosen one way, which is to hit your son. I'm curious why that's the way you chose. He said, I didn't know there was any other way. I said, well, let's think about it. What other way could there be? So we started then down a road of thinking about other possibilities to help his son. I saw him like a year and a half or 2 years later, and he said that absolutely changed his life and his whole family, and how they were able to work things out. And they got his son into a particular program, and his daughter, his sister started working with the brother in a particular way, and all these things totally changed everything. And he never hit his son again. Now, if I had gone into that thinking my way is the right way, I mean, obviously I didn't want him hitting his son, clearly. Well, maybe not clearly, but I didn't want him hit. I don't want anybody getting hurt. But it didn't make sense to me. I was trying to understand. And that helped him understand, because most people don't understand. So I come back to the request of, how do you feel when Tammy and Kristen come in? Given you have this stance about young girls wanting to get pregnant and being annoyed and aggravated by that, how do you feel when these girls come in? And then I can help figure that out. So that's how I approach communication. My desire is always to understand, and there is a natural connection. I'm not right about anything. But what I'd like to do is I'd like to understand and serve, right? And so that I can do my work better. And why aren't people learning this? It's beyond my comprehension. But anyway, so here we are. So it's in my interest personally, not because I'm selfish, but because I just like feeling good, that we all get along. So if we're working together, I'm going to do what's in my power to help us get along. And understanding one another is the number one tool for that. And it often dissipates conflicting situations and tensions before they can even escalate, because most people are not clear. So if I can just ask questions and be curious, you just have to be curious. You don't have to be a genius. You don't have to know all the answers. Just be curious. You will be amazed, amazed, amazed at what comes up. Do it with your family members. Do it with your siblings, children, parents. Just start asking questions and listen to the answers. Imagine, and I think it's a problem in our world today, children that grow up to be adults and have never been heard are always occupied trying to get heard or feeling like they don't have an impact anyway because somebody just told them what they're feeling didn't make sense or it's ridiculous or don't be that way. So, and it expresses itself differently in men than in women. A lot of my experience in working with women who've gone through that is that they allow themselves to be overruled and often aren't able to take care of themselves also in sexual situations, right? To stand up and say no. So, and with men, it's also different. Then a lot of them go into competition or feel like they can't compete or end up being victims of bullying because they don't know how to stand up for themselves because they've never been heard. Their feelings have never been validated. So it's really wonderful that you're giving that gift to your kids. It really is. And it's phenomenal when people feel heard. It just is like it's like you don't have to work anymore. Okay, now what are we going to do, right? It's like that occupation of trying to get heard falls away because now you've been heard. Now you can move on to the solution or you can move on to the common task or whatever it is. This book, Connected Parent, Empowered Child, is a book for parents. It is based on all the work that I've done. I wrote it in 2015. Can highly recommend it. If the work that I do is appealing to you, it's an exceptional book for parenting. And I have two children that prove that the content works. It's not conceptual, it's actually hands-on. So when we know what we're experiencing and we kind of anchor that, we will want to go back there again. It's like, oh, wait, that last time that felt really good. What did we do there? Oh, yeah, I listened to them. Right. So when we can anchor our experiences, that's why I ask you all at the end of a session, where are you at right now? What are you taking with you? That anchors that in our learning experience, in our minds and our bodies, our nervous systems, like it's a whole body experience, visceral experience. We will want to repeat that if it was a positive one to capture your experience about what you've just learned. Okay. Your question was, so are you saying that by clarifying for yourself, you actually are helping the other person clarify? This is a perfect example of that. Right? It's a
Yeah.
gift to both of you. That's communication. That's communication. And conflict resolution or talking about feelings is not something you want to do in writing because there's too much. It's always going to be interpreted by the reader, not by the sender. Written is always dependent on the state of the receiver. Conversations are important to be had this way because we can respond immediately. We can see people's facial expressions, how, their body language. We can hear their tone of voice, the words that they're choosing. So you asked for an example. I would have started all the way at the top with more facts. So this is what I would do. What I'm giving you all a structure that you can break things down with. And I've been doing this for so long that often when I'm talking to you, this is integrated or mirroring is integrated. And it's not like, okay, now I'm going to mirror you. I'm feeding back what I heard and then I move forward. So you all are coming with me. You're feeling understood. You're feeling heard. I go to the next point. I share it. I listen to your feedback, make sure that I've understood you. You feel heard and understood. And then we move on to the next point, right? That we're connected as we're moving through the process. But you have to have the bare bones first. That's why we practice mirroring, right? Exactly. Did you hear what he said? No, say it again. Okay, say it again. Is there anything else? Like that's the practice when you start anything. And the same thing with the 4 steps of communication. Do it for yourself first, right? So it's never clean. It's not just that we're human beings. Remember the oatmeal model? It's all just kind of flows together and mushes, right? But if you have a structure like this that you're clear about the facts and your feelings and what's important to you and what you're asking for, then whatever conversation you're having is going to go a lot more clearly and better. It's not monumental. I promise you, if I could get here, anybody could get here because yelling was my mode of communication. Um, and I'd like to remind you to use mirroring as your um, buying time. So if you can, as a segue into the 4 steps, start with mirroring. Start with clarifying. And that will buy you time and calm, excuse me, hiccups, calm the situation so that you can go into the 4 steps, or at least have the structure in your mind.